Hey there, welcome everybody. It's Melanie Thomas with eXp Realty. This is my first inaugural episode of Community Corner, where I'm going to try to feature either former clients of mine or people that are interesting in the community that I think have good information to share with everyone that will be helpful. So today I am honored to have as my first guest Rebecca Vieira Cox, who is a cherished former client of mine as well. And she also happens to be an international HR consultant. So in this climate that we're living in right now, with COVID and unemployment at record highs and people out in the job market that didn't expect to be, I wanted to have somebody on who could kind of give us some tips and tricks if you're either unexpectedly unemployed and looking for work, or maybe you just graduated from school and need to know how to navigate this crazy world. So welcome, Rebecca. I am glad to have you on with me tonight.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
All right, great. So let's get right into it. My basic question, my first question is for people who may be in the job market, like I said, unexpectedly, maybe had worked somewhere 20 years, haven't written a resume forever. Do you find in the things that you come across in your everyday experience that a lot of people have no idea how to really write a resume?
Absolutely. I've been reviewing resumes for 7 years and I'm still, perplexed at times in terms of what I see. But I realized that resume writing, it's a skill, and I encourage candidates, if you don't think it's a skill that you necessarily have, you can ask someone who is a professional at reviewing resumes to review your resume. So it doesn't hurt to get your resume professionally reviewed.
Right. So I had heard, and tell me if this is true, that a lot of people, like, you go on these job boards, Indeed or ZipRecruiter or whatever, that thousands of these resumes never even get seen. Like, is that true? That people are just punching these things out and they're going straight into whatever cyberspace? Where do they go?
Yes. The black hole, the resume black hole.
Black hole. Is that a real thing?
It is a real thing, especially if you're applying to a large company that's using what is called the applicant tracking software, or the ATS. 75% of resumes get rejected before they even land in front of the eyes of a human.
Wow. That's crazy. So how do you control that? I mean, how would you even know that, whether it's worth your time to do it? What suggestions do you have? How, is there a way around that? Is that just inevitable? What makes you get through that gatekeeper that's in your way, getting seen?
Well, that's why I'm here today. I'm here to share some tips on, really improving your resume and improving your chances of getting past that gatekeeper, that electronic gatekeeper, and improving your chances of at least, moving on to the next stage in the process.
Mm-hmm.
I suggest you use TagCrowd. It's an online word generator. And what that software does is it allows you to copy and paste your resume into this software. And it gives you the key words, or the words that appear most frequently on your resume. Now, what you can do as well is copy and paste the job description of the position that you're applying for into that same software and see the keywords that appear most frequently. So you want to make sure that the words that appear most frequently on your resume matches what's on the job description, or what appears most frequently. That's really when the ATS is sifting through your resume, that's what it's looking for, a match. So it's really looking to eliminate the least qualified candidates or matches, and for you to really improve your chances of getting your resume into the hands of a human. That is a really good tool. There are several other tools that are similar, or provides a similar feature. So
That was free. That TagCrowd was free for people.
absolutely free for, yes.
So that's interesting. So then you're kind of saying that if you need to match it up so specifically to job per job, that you actually have to like have different versions of your resume depending on the job you're applying for. That's probably a lot of work, but you're saying that that's what you really need to do if you need to get through that gatekeeper, as you said. So you recommend that your resume should be specified to each position?
Absolutely. It's something that I say over and over every time I meet with a candidate or I'm giving some advice or recommendations to anyone who's looking for a new opportunity. I often, say that you need to tweak your resume every time you're applying for a position. And since we're using, or most companies are using AI now to really do the job of a human, you have to apply or employ these techniques so that you can really improve your chances. So yes, I strongly recommend that if you're serious about the about landing a job, that you put the work in, you take the effort and initiative to really tweak your resume for every posting. And remember, if you're going through an ATS, you want to make sure that there is um, you know, that match with your resume and the job description, that the words that appear most frequently.
Well, that's good advice. So what about the actual, you talked about formatting. So like I said, 100 years ago when I got out of school, everyone was taught, okay, you put your name and address, your work history in chronological order from most recent to oldest, and then your education, and then your references and so on. So is that still the way it goes? And like how I know they say you shouldn't have a long resume. So if you have 25 years of work history, how many years back should you be putting? Should you be condensing that or changing it around based on the job you're applying for? What is recommended or what is common now as far as how much history do you put on there if you have a long work history?
I would say keep it, for at least 5 to 10 years, especially if it's relevant experience. For instance, if you've been working for 25 to 30 years, what you did right out of college is not necessary. You want to keep it to experience that is relevant to the position that you're applying for and shows career progression. If you've been with a company for 10 years, that's great. If you've had multiple jobs over your 30-year period of being in the workforce, it's not necessary for you to go, all the way back to your very first job. So I would say keep it to relevant experience and try to avoid putting anything or any job on your resume that's older than 10 years, 5 to 10 years.
Okay, that's interesting. That's good to know. So, especially for people who, like I said, may be in the job market for the first time in many, many years. So, that being said, what if you're at the other end of the spectrum? I have no experience. I just graduated from UCF and I landed in the middle of COVID world, and I have no idea how to approach looking for a job. I have no experience. Or somebody perhaps who may be displaced from their job and is changing career field because of lack of opportunity in their current field. So they're basically starting from scratch that way as well. What are your recommendations for somebody who may be going for a position that maybe at request experience that you just don't have, but you still want to give it a shot?
Okay, so I want to touch quickly on, persons who are now entering the workforce with no experience. Some positions will ask for experience, some obviously will be a bit more flexible, especially if it's an entry-level position. But what you really want to do is put any project that you've worked on. So let's say, for instance, you're just out of high school, just out of college, and you may have worked on a special project, or you've, held leadership positions in different organizations, different peer groups. You want to put that information out there because it demonstrates that you may not necessarily have work-related experience, but you do have some skill sets that you can apply to the opportunity or the job that you're applying for. What is a really good thing to mention on your resume is volunteering. If you're part of an organization or you spend time doing any philanthropic work or any time in the community giving back through volunteerism, that really you know enhances your chances. To recruiters and hiring managers love to see that
Yeah,
people.
that makes sense. And it probably demonstrates leadership as well and with your skills. So yeah, so I guess you're saying emphasize your skills versus your experience in that case,
Yes,
the resume.
yes.
So that being the case, again, we talked about how you format and you list it. I know, like I was saying back in the day, you would say, you know, if this was my job, I did such and such and such, did such and such, like task based. Would you say nowadays, instead of just putting a list of tasks that you do as part of your job, is there a better way or a more enhanced way of listing um, your job, not just the list of duties that you took care of, but what you actually did in accomplishments aspect? How does that work?
Yes. I'm glad that you brought that up because that's really when you spoke of changes, what happened then versus now, recruiters, hiring managers are looking for impact. And when you create your resume, it's not about you, so to speak, but it's about what you can do, what you've accomplished. And your accomplishments are really key in your resume. So if you're not looking at it from that perspective, you're missing an opportunity to really sell yourself. So when you create your resume, especially when you talk about your experience, which is really the meat and potatoes of your resume, you want to focus on your accomplishments. And there's a technique that is used when we speak of, accomplishments. You can use this approach. It's called a PAR. It's an acronym for the problem, action, and the result. It speaks about the problem, the action, the results. And that's really how you should be guided when you are formatting your resume or when you're creating that resume. You want to talk about, your accomplishments and what your actions, what results were achieved as a result of your actions. So I encourage candidates to use the PAR approach when creating or talking about their experience. Really use action words to describe your accomplishments. So that's something that I encourage candidates. When you get into the substance of your resume, you really want to show the impact that you've made in the position that you're currently in or any previous position that you've held. And to help you accomplish that, you have to use that approach: problem, action, results. Here's the problem, here's what I did, and here's what I achieved as a result of it.
Gotcha. So not just a list of tasks, actually show what you did. Said I prepared reports. Okay, well, what were the result of those reports, or the purpose of them, and who did you work with, and how did they help the company or whatever? Gotcha.
Exactly. And that really distinguishes you from an accomplisher or an achiever versus a doer. So yes, it depends on how you know, phrase, you know, your bullet points or any information that you're putting in there. That will really distinguish you from a doer versus or a tasker versus an achiever. So you have to, at the end of the day, show that, I'm results oriented and here's what I've accomplished. I'm also a problem solver.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So because it seems like nowadays pretty much everyone looks for jobs in the same, monster, no pun intended, that's one of the job boards, but like the Zip Recruiters, Indeeds, all of that stuff. Do you think that's the most effective way to look for a job, or do you recommend that people actually try to, if it's possible, get directly to an employer's website or an employer themselves to try to cut through all of that, middleman stuff?
I think personally that job boards have become less effective. Once upon a time, they were great. They're still used. ZipRecruiter obviously is a very popular job board, and many organizations actually use that. But I think, the saying goes, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But I don't think that that statement should be used exclusively. I think it's a bit of both. It's who you know and what you know. And what I encourage candidates to do is to really, leverage the online networking platforms such as LinkedIn. Keep your LinkedIn profile current. Make sure that you have a powerful introduction, any accomplishments, any accolades, any awards that you've received, throughout your employment history or your career that obviously is relevant and you can accentuate. I encourage candidates to really leverage LinkedIn. Make sure that you leverage your connections. That can be an opportunity or a door to your next opportunity. So you really want to make sure that you leverage your connections. In fact, it's said that, networking is probably 50% more effective.
Oh, that's good to know. A lot of people just think they can just send the resume into the ether and somebody's going to call them magically. So you gotta get all kinds of tentacles out there working for you, right? That's probably
Where you've got to be creative. It's a very competitive, world.
now, especially right with what's happening. So
Be creative.
question on that. So you've put out some resumes, you followed all your tips there. I'm not hearing anything back. What do you recommend as far as follow up? How long should you wait? And is it effective? Who do you try to reach out to say, hey, I applied for this position X number of days ago or weeks ago, whatever. Just following up. Is that something that you recommend people do?
So a best practice after an interview that I encourage candidates to do is to follow up with an email. So at the end of that interview, within 24 hours, you want to send an email, thanking the interviewing panel or the recruiter for the time, interviewing, and you want to really just reinforce why you should be that candidate. Now, a little tip, if you want to go the extra mile and get really creative, instead of sending that, just a basic thank you, you can send a handwritten note. It personalizes, that it gives a personal touch. So you can send a handwritten note, or you can just simply send an email really summarizing and reinforcing anything that you think you've missed to mention that's really crucial or important, for the interviewer to know. You can use that opportunity to really put it in there as well. Now, let's just go back a bit to applying for a position. I know that it's difficult to really understand or get an idea of what the personality of the candidate is by looking at a piece of paper. But if you really want to, take it a step further and really get creative, I encourage candidates to do a brief video intro. And there are different, platforms that they can use to get a professionally done video and include it as a link on the resume, perhaps, or send it directly to the hiring manager.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do a quick, 3-minute video and just introducing yourself, with a little punchline. Obviously, you don't want to summarize your resume in a video. That defeats the purpose. But you really want to, get creative and do something that the other candidates may not have thought of to set yourself apart. So a quick 3-minute intro, here's who I am and here's why you should hire me, to go along. It really helps for the recruiter or the hiring manager to get some insight into your personality.
That's a cool idea. So obviously this shouldn't need to be said, but obviously if you're going to make a video or go for an interview in person, of course we want to always make sure we look our best, right? I mean, I'm sure you've come across all ends of the spectrum in your experience.
I have.
If you feel free to share any stories you have about maybe inappropriate dress or anything or even just the email addresses or anything that people might be using their personal emails that might not be safe for
I've
work.
seen some very, very creative email addresses, and it's one of the things that I shouldn't have to say. But if you're going to apply for a job and expect to be taken seriously, then you need to ensure that your email address is professional. Keep the creativity for your closer social network, not for your professional network. Um, what I also want to touch on is appearance. You just briefly mentioned that. Appearance is very important. If you are going for an interview, then I often say dress like you've got the job, dress for success, dress to make an impact. You know, your appearance should always be professional, regardless of the position that you're applying for. You want to be taken seriously, and this is your opportunity to really make that impression. Hey, I'm I want this, and I'm here to make a statement. And your attire and personal presentation, your body language, your posture, these are all things that should really be taken seriously, you want to exude confidence, and the way that you make eye contact, the way that shake the hands of the interviewer.
If that's still a thing, I don't know. In the COVID world, are we still shaking hands?
Well, given the circumstances, we're all doing Zoom interviews now, but under normal, usual circumstances,
Right.
these are things that you have to take into consideration. But like I said, your appearance is very important. Your attire, avoid loud colors, avoid any logo type T-shirt, anything that reveals skin that should otherwise be covered. If you are, if you have multiple piercings, jewelry, these are things that you just want to be conservative. Right? You're not there to make a fashion statement. You want the interviewer and the recruiter to focus on what you have to say, not be distracted by your excessive.
Absolutely. So again, shouldn't have to be said, but we all know it has to be said, right?
Yeah.
So some great tips. Rebecca, thank you so much. Obviously, in my field in real estate, my favorite type of client is one that has a job. So we want to keep everybody employed. If you're unemployed, one additional question I had though, just I was curious about something. So take a person who may have been out of the market for a while, maybe they're older, or on the other end of the spectrum, they're fresh out of school. Do you recommend when you put because you mentioned only use 10 years or so of work history, what about your education? If you graduated from college in 1990 versus 2020, obviously if you're looking at that resume, you know that you can kind of guesstimate the age of each candidate. Would you, because ageism could be a thing, either if somebody could be ruled out because they're too young or, sadly too old, which is wrong, but we know it probably happens. Do you recommend that to avoid that, should you put the years of your education or just the name of the school and the major? What is your take on that?
I think if you believe that you are going to be disadvantaged because of your age, now I say that you mentioned ageism, and it's real. I believe that everyone should be given an equal opportunity, but sometimes the reality we face is quite different. That's a good point. And I would recommend, in a situation where you think that you may be disadvantaged because of your age, that I would encourage a candidate to leave the year of their graduation out.
Well, those are some great tips you provided, Rebecca. Thank you so much. I hope that people will get use out of that, no matter where you are on the spectrum. If you're just coming out of school looking for work, if you've been unfortunately unemployed due to the COVID, or if you're just bored with your job and looking for a change, these are some great pointers that you gave us today for anyone who's looking to get in the job market and stand out. So thank you so much for that. If anyone wants to reach out to you to offer your services at 21st Century HR, can you offer anything of assistance to folks for that?
Absolutely. So you have my contact information, Melanie. You can obviously share it on this video, and I'm happy to help anyone who may need some advice, whether it's coaching on how to prepare for the interview, how to respond to frequently asked interview questions, any questions that they may have, just to help them to improve their chances of landing the next opportunity. I also provide coaching, career coaching. If you're looking to change industries and you want to really leverage the skills and experience that you have, I am happy to help you with that as well. So I do provide career coaching, and if anyone is looking for some assistance there, you can share my contact information and I would be happy to help.
Thanks so much for that. I'll definitely put that up here at the end. So thanks again, Rebecca, for being my first guest here on Community Corner. I will have everyone reach out to you if they need to. And again, thanks for being on. We appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, and good luck.
Thanks. Bye-bye.